Yourself with Sarah Dawkins, episode 36, with guest Marcia Murphy. After discovering the root cause of her illness in 1997, Marcia spent 3 years at the Option Institute in Western Massachusetts, discovering and changing the beliefs that had led her to become ill. As she healed, Marcia became an Option Process mentor, allowing her to help others as the Institute mentors had helped her. After her recovery, Marcia authored 2 books on her 11-year healing journey from environmental illness. Her first book, Healing Environmental Illness from Within, and her second book, Coming Home to Love, are both available on Amazon and from Marcia herself. Today, Marcia's enjoying retirement and spreading hopeful message that environmental illness does not have to be a life sentence. And she now helps others to understand the effects of the emotional stressors on the immune system, along with the power of the mind and love to bring healing. Welcome, Marcia. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah. That was such a beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful.
You are such a beautiful person, Marcia. Would you like to share your own illness and healing?
Yes.
For the people. Thank you.
Yes, I have 3 main things I want to say today. But first I will tell you that I had 2 forms of environmental illness. I had a sensitivity to electromagnetic fields as well as chemicals. And I had a whole series of symptoms for 9 years before these illnesses were diagnosed. So in all, I was actually sick for 20 years.
Wow.
So anyway,
what kind of symptoms did you have, Marcia?
Eye problems, heart problems, bladder problems, digestive problems, allergies. Well, let me tell you. We'll go on here. The first breakthrough for me in healing was finding the right doctor for me.
Yeah.
So that doctor for me was Sherry Rogers, an MD in Syracuse, New York, who had the illness herself for 16 years, and she recovered. So when I went to her office, I traveled all the way from Colorado, where I was living, to New York, which was no easy feat.
No.
And I was able to stay at a bed and breakfast near her office that was chemical free, so I could tolerate it without reacting. So this doctor had the illness herself for 16 years. The first thing she told me was, chemical sensitivity is an immune system problem. It was the first time I had ever heard that from anybody. All the conventional doctors were telling me it was all in my head. The alternative doctors in the United States knew it wasn't all in my head, but they really didn't know how to treat it. So it was very empowering meeting Sherry Rogers because she told me it was an immune system problem, and now I had something to work on besides trying to avoid the chemical, which is what people with this illness do. We try to avoid the chemical, and you can't. Chemicals are everywhere in today's world. So Dr. Rogers had a list of immune system stressors. There were 7 on her list. 6 of them were physical in nature, and I will name them now so that people will know. The first one is inhalant allergies. I had inhalant allergies, pollens, house dust, mold. I had them for years. That's an immune system stressor. The next one is food allergies. I was tested in her office for all these things. I had 11 foods that I was allergic to that I had to eliminate from my diet. Nutritional deficiencies. I had quite a few of those as well.
Yeah.
I had candida in my digestive tract. Hormone imbalance. That was the only thing that was negative. I didn't have a hormone imbalance.
Super.
The sixth one was heavy metals. I didn't know much about heavy metals at the time. Mercury and aluminum and copper. Our body contains these heavy metals because they're everywhere in our world. And then the seventh item on her list was stress. We didn't discuss stress, and I'm sure it was because both of us thought we knew what came under the heading of stress.
I'm sure.
Neither one of us really knew, I guess. So, Dr. Rogers sent me home with a very comprehensive protocol to follow. She had to make a special serum for me for the inhalant allergies because the serum in the conventional allergy doctor office contains a chemical. It's a preservative. And she claims that that's, she told me, she said, this is not a good thing to have. So she made a special serum for me and mailed it to me in Colorado. So she sent me home. Oh, and besides these four things I had to address, I had to do coffee enemas twice a day as a way of detoxing my liver and my digestive tract. This was a very full schedule from morning till night.
I'm sure.
So I followed this protocol for the next year, and I didn't recover. Now, of course, I wasn't realizing that I had as many mercury fillings as in my mouth as I did. And I wasn't really looking at stress. Okay? I was counting on Dr. Rogers correcting my problem with her protocol.
Yeah.
So along about that time, two things happened. I had one last conversation with Dr. Rogers. I told her that breathing problems were added to my many symptoms of reactivity. She said, the only thing I have left to suggest is that you get out of that air-polluted city of Boulder, get yourself into a strictly chemical-free environment, and stay there and heal that way. She could not give me a time frame. I kept trying to 6 months, a year. No way to know. Everybody would be different.
Yeah.
Then the second thing that happened that was significant was a friend came to visit who also had chemical sensitivity.
Right.
She was a lot sicker than I was. She said, I want you to know I'm moving to Georgia to a place called Pleasant Valley Ministries to work with the minister there. His path is to help environmentally ill people recover from chemical sensitivity. She had listened to a set of the minister's tapes in which he states that he believes the root cause of chemical sensitivity is fear. Well, when I heard this, fear, I thought this was crazy.
Yeah.
I thought she was going on a wild goose chase. But before she left my house that day, she said, now when I leave here, I want you to search your soul to find out where you are in fear. What are you holding on to that you need to let go of in the fear category? I said, yes, La'ana, I will. And meanwhile, I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
So after she left, I couldn't get what she said out of my mind. And in any event, it was time to look at the stress component that Dr. Rogers had told me about. And when I thought about it, fear and stress are related because if you're stressed out, you're definitely experiencing fear.
Yeah.
There was only one thing I could think of in my life that fit in that category, and that was a relationship with a very loved aunt. And my aunt took the place of my mother quite often during my childhood, so I really loved her. And when we became adults, we just couldn't get along. My aunt was on a very strong blood pressure medication that was changing her whole personality. That's all I'm going to say. But we couldn't get along. I was in Colorado, she was in Massachusetts. We were talking on the phone every single week, and every week I got off the phone, I was in a state of not only fear, anxiety, I was sad, I was angry, I was confused, I was frustrated. I became convinced after my friend left that this was the number one stressor in my life, and I had to make peace with it or I wouldn't recover.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to make peace with that. That was when, well, to tell you the truth, I might as well I'm telling the truth today. I heard a little voice in my head, and the little voice was the one who reminded me of the Option Institute. I knew about it, but I never would have thought to go there if I hadn't heard this voice. And the minute I heard the voice, I thought, oh, yes, that is the place to go. So I called up and I signed up for a 1-month program at the Option Institute. And I traveled there. It was very difficult to travel there. I had to have a friend pick me up at the airport and bring me to her cabin up in Maine on an island where I could breathe for 4 days to stop the reactivity.
Yeah.
Then she drove me to the Option Institute. That's how I got there. When I got there, I discovered I was sharing housing with 4 other women, all of whom had personal care products that they were using that I was reacting to morning and night.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my situation. There were 32 people in this month-long option program. From the time that program started, I saw how much fear I was in. Fear was around every corner.
Yeah.
Some of the people in the program were wearing aftershave and perfume. I had to go up to them and ask them not to wear it and explain why. It was very hard for me to do.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So the other thing I was afraid to do was to speak up in this group of 32 people. So at the end of 2 weeks, when I hadn't spoken up to get help, I hired a private mentor to tell my story to about my aunt, to ask for help to come to peace with this. And what the Option Institute does is they help you discover the beliefs behind whatever you're unhappy about. So during this mentoring session, a couple things happened that I think I should say. When I started to talk about the situation with my aunt, my body went into a physical uproar. I couldn't eat anything for 24 hours. That's how upsetting this situation was to me. Talk about stress.
Yeah.
And anyway, during this session, I discovered 3 beliefs that I was holding about my aunt. I was making myself responsible for her happiness.
Yeah.
She couldn't change any of her ways. It was 100% up to me to restore peace between us. I mean, it was just terrible, the beliefs I was holding. I didn't know those beliefs were operating in me. They were all underneath the surface of my consciousness. And when I saw them, I was amazed and I was appalled.
Yeah.
So I decided in that moment that I was going to drop those beliefs. That night, when I went home to the housing I was sharing with the 4 other women, I stopped reacting to their personal care products.
How fabulous.
And when I saw that, I knew that relationship was a big part of what was weakening my immune system. Now, a lot of people listening to this probably are having a hard time right now grasping this concept.
Yeah.
Because it's about stress and it's about the immune system. This is what you have to understand. Chemical sensitivity is an immune system problem. You have to figure out what's weakening your immune system, period. And the chemical is not the only thing that's involved. It's what's going on inside here, some of which we're not aware of. So I spent a month at the Option Institute. I went back for a second month program 3 months later because I knew now that I had a lot more I had to work on and discover, right? And eventually I even moved back there and did the mentor training because when I discovered in those 2 programs what was going on inside me, I knew it wasn't going to, go away very soon. So anyway, let me tell you, the second breakthrough was discovering all those emotional stresses that I was holding on to that were weakening my immune system and keeping my reactivity going. So let me find where I have that. Okay. Feelings of rejection. Okay, bear with me here.
That's okay. Because stress is so prevalent in our society today and causes so many problems that the majority of people have no idea of the effects on their body. And it's known to cause inflammation, and inflammation causes havoc with our immune system.
Yes. It comes under the heading of stress, but it also comes under the heading of fear.
Yeah.
It's both of them. Okay, so here are my personal emotional stresses, which I had to address to lessen the load on my immune system in order to recover. The first one, and this was the key one, the number one, I was experiencing feelings of rejection throughout my life. It all started in childhood. I came from a very small family, 5 of us, and 4 of us of the 5 were very affectionate in showing our love to each other, kissing and hugging and cuddling and a lot of affection. My mother could not do that. She did not know how to express her feelings, any feelings really. She was a very, very good woman, but she could not express her love to me as a child. So when I was 4 years old, a belief formed that my mother didn't love me because of that. And when you form a belief, of course, I was a child, so that went underneath the surface of my consciousness. And it played out throughout my life. My entire childhood was built on fear. My mother was a working woman. She worked full time. So my aunt, her sister, who lived with us, really took the place of my mother. It was this aunt that I wasn't getting along with. She took the place of my mother. She was a 3rd child that her mother didn't want. She didn't want her because it was during the Depression and she couldn't feed the 2 children she already had.
Yeah.
So my aunt also felt rejected by her mother, and she taught me all the behaviors of a person who feels rejected. So people pleasing, rescuing. Everybody was more important than I was. So I grew up with very low self-esteem, unworthiness. So when you have a parent that doesn't love you, your life becomes a cry for love. So there's certain things that you do. Here are the other things. I got the idea in my little child's brain that if I was perfect, my mother would love me. So I had to be perfect. Can you imagine the stress that puts on your immune system? And I was still doing it as an adult. I was living my life from a should or a have to standpoint. I could never do what I wanted to do. I had to do what was important to another person.
Yeah.
I hope this gives people the idea of what I'm talking about. It was impressed upon me that I was responsible for other people's happiness and unhappiness.
Yeah.
And of course, my aunt was carrying one of those beliefs, which is why we weren't getting along very well. And I was going along with it. So, and I felt guilty a lot. I was frightened. I was frightened to stand up in front of other children in class, which of course was coming out at the Option Institute because I had to see that and look at it.
Yeah.
So the big breakthrough for me, breakthrough number 2 after Sherry Rogers, was discovering all these emotional stresses that I had going on within me. That was why a year later I moved back to the Option Institute and I took the mentor training, because they helped me there to see the beliefs I was carrying and move beyond them. That's one of the biggest things I want to put out to people. Now, I was there at the Option Institute for almost 3 years, counting the programs and the mentor training. I went back to Boulder, expecting to start life over, but I hadn't discovered all of my beliefs yet. I had a lot of spiritual stresses that I hadn't discovered yet. So I wanted to get my mentoring practice going, and I went to a marketing class to get myself rolling with my mentoring program for people. And I met a woman there. I was told about a woman there who led trips down to a healing center, a spiritual healing center. Long story short, because I know we have limited time today, when I knew there was something that still wasn't right within me. I was much better than I was before I went to the Option Institute, but I wasn't completely healed, and I knew that. So when I went to see this woman who led trips down to the healing center, she explained to me what it was about, and I made plans to go there. I knew there were things I hadn't discovered, and I was just going to throw myself on the mercy of the beings in this healing center. And that was where I discovered all the spiritual stresses. Now, I want you to hear this one. This was the biggest one of all. It was communicated to me at the healing center that I had another belief I wasn't aware of. When I was a child, in age 4, and the belief formed that my mother didn't love me, there was a continuation of that belief that I was not aware of. The full belief was, my mother doesn't love me. If my mother doesn't love me, how could God love me?
Yeah.
Or other people? That was the real belief that was operating.
Yeah.
And the minute I heard that, I knew I had separated myself from divine love as well as self-love. It was a separation from divine love and a separation from self-love and love from other people. And all this was stressing my immune system and keeping this reactivity going. Not only to chemicals, but to all the pollens, to the foods. Reactivity to anything is the immune system. So, and they also showed me all the things that I not only didn't feel loved by God, I didn't trust God. I was in so much fear. I was trying to control everything in my life.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of things going on. And I recount all this in my second book, Coming Home to Love. It's a very good read. Not to pat myself on the back, but I did a really good job of writing about that healing center.
Oh, fabulous.
Now, there were 2 other things that I discovered after the healing center that I feel I need to mention.
Please do.
One of them is the importance of forgiveness. I did receive a healing at the healing center, which brought me back to a normal life. But I had work to do when I went home, and I knew I did. So I had to took a course. I read the book Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping, and I took a forgiveness course. I had to forgive family members, and I had to forgive myself.
Yeah.
So I took 2 courses with him. And he was a master at helping people to forgive. I'll never forget him. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. And he's no longer on the earth, but other people have carried on his work. So if anybody needs a forgiveness course, look up Radical Forgiveness and you'll find it. It's still operating, but under different management.
And forgiveness is so powerful, isn't it?
Yes. The other thing is, these negative emotions, when they come in, spiritually speaking, we have a physical body, a mental body, and an emotional body. When we have an emotional trauma, such as I did when I was 4 years old with my mother, thinking she didn't love me, that goes into your emotional body and it stores there unless you release it. If you don't do that after a certain amount of time, that stored emotional trauma will work its way into your physical body and it will store in an organ. So I had a lot of that stored in my liver, coming under the heading of anger. I was very angry over a lot of things that happened in my childhood. Anger, anger, and more anger. That was another thing that Colin Tipping helped me with. He helped me get rid of the anger. So, and I would really, I think there's an awful lot of anger with chemical sensitivity because the liver is one of the main detoxification organs.
Yeah.
So I knew if I didn't get rid of that, I was going to be stuck with this chemical sensitivity. So I did a lot of anger work too.
Yeah. And it's so necessary. You know, when you break down an illness, it's so multifaceted. There's, you know, it's not ever just one thing. There's a whole range of things that need addressing.
Now I know everybody's story is different. Everybody's story is different. Dr. Rogers told me that she has these 7 items that she calls immune system stressors. She said, I tell everyone they have to address it simultaneously. And she says, the reason I say that is because for everybody, it'll be different. She says, for one person, the immune system stressor may be 50% inhalant allergies and 50% heavy metals. For another person, it may be 75% food allergies and 25% candida. After my experience, I know stress is definitely one of the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway.
And now you're healed.
And now I'm healed.
And helping others.
It was communicated to me at the healing center that my healing was to get myself back to a normal life. They told me that there were some chemicals that I would still react to, but not ones that I would come in contact with during my normal life, and that has proved true. The last significant reaction I had was 17 years ago.
Wow.
And yet I have come into a place where I come in contact with chemicals. Like, for instance, I can't go into a beauty parlor because of the hairspray and the permanent solution. Those are too strong for me. But I know that now, so I just avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's ways and means around it, isn't there?
Yes.
And it is about identifying what works for us and what harms us, and avoiding as best as possible the things that harm us. And only experience brings that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a powerful healing though, to go truly inside and find the root cause of it. Because most people will go the physical route and sort of change their diet, maybe do some more exercise. But we need to look at our beliefs. Our mindset is so, so powerful. And it really is. Mindset is key to everything. I think it was Henry Ford says, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you went into healing as I did, that, we will heal this. Whatever it takes, we'll do whatever we have to do. And, it's sometimes it's difficult because or challenging because we're addressing things that we've maybe hidden deep down within inside of us, that have happened on a subconscious level. Like you say, you felt that your mum didn't love you, and then you felt that why would God love you if your mum couldn't love you? And it's all these beliefs that layer on top of each other, and are unconscious to us because they were formed when we were that small child. And it really is about unpicking that, because so many people have got issues needing to be people pleasing or needing to be perfectionists, or even just be in control of making people happy and feel responsible for people when they're not happy. And actually, it's none of that is our responsibility. We're only responsible for ourselves.
So,
But
right.
we take on board this layer that we feel responsible for other people. And actually, we're not. We're
No,
only responsible for ourselves.
right.
But it is about unpicking that and understanding there is a root to that. There's a belief somewhere that that's come from. And I do feel sometimes we don't need to necessarily go all the way back and actually identify where it came from, as long as we can acknowledge that it is happening within us, and
Yeah.
then do the forgiveness work, because as we said earlier before we came online, that forgiveness is so powerful, and it's about understanding that we're all the product of our life's experiences, and nobody comes into this life with a handbook on how to do things correctly. We just learn by doing and watching and sensing the world through all of our senses. And if we don't become conscious of it, we just continue traits that have happened within families, because we see that's what's the normal way to live life or raise a family. And so it's about understanding where those beliefs come from, and to do that you have to become conscious. Why do I believe that? Where might that have come from? Why? What is the origin of that? What is that belief all about? And but we have the power of choice as well, and we are able to change that belief. We can decide that I'm no longer going to believe that anymore. I'm going to start believing this now. And sometimes there's forgiveness work to do with the people involved around that issue. And as you mentioned earlier, Marcia, we have to forgive ourselves as well for not having the skills, the power, the knowledge to do anything about whatever happened. Quite often we were children, and we just did not know. So we just took on board everything that we were told. And once we become conscious of that as adults, we do need to forgive ourselves for not having those skills, because we couldn't possibly have had them. And we were just
That's right.
reacting to the situation that we found ourselves in. And often, I think people can sometimes maybe forgive other people or learn to start forgiving other people, but they can forget themselves. And they need to be able to forgive themselves for things that have just happened that are outside of their control.
Right. We're down here on Earth having a human experience.
Exactly.
And that's humans. Humans are not perfect.
No, and never will be.
No, we never will
Err
be.
is to err is human. So all we can do is the best that we can do at any one time, and within our skills and knowledge and remit. And in the future, maybe we can learn different things and forgive other people. And when we talk about forgiveness, the forgiveness is never really for the other person. The forgiveness is for
For
ourselves.
us, yes.
Yes, it's the gift we give to ourselves. And all we're doing is we're acknowledging that we were hurt, and we're letting go. We're acknowledging, we're accepting that whatever happened, happened. We had no power, we had no control over it, and then let it go. And maybe forgive the person, or some people have said, I can't forgive that person for what they've done to me. So, can we forgive the soul of that person? One way or another, to find forgiveness so that we can accept it's happened, to let go, so that we free ourselves of that burden of carrying that hurt around with us, because the forgiveness allows us to let go.
I'm looking for something here that I might
Okay.
like to, if I can find it. Well, anyway, it was about forgiveness again.
Okay.
But forgiveness, something that was told to me that really resonated too was, you don't have to forget what has happened to you to forgive.
No.
Forgiveness. By forgiving someone, you just are separating yourselves from the energy of whatever happened.
Yes.
Separating yourself from the energy. How can you ever forget some of the worst things that have happened to you? You also, I was told, you don't have to welcome somebody who has hurt you back into your life.
No.
There's just as much forgiveness in saying, I forgive you, but you're not welcome here anymore,
Yeah.
as in welcoming them back. You don't have to welcome that person back.
No. Setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I found personally is I've forgiven people for things they did to me when I was a young child, was that in the act of forgiving, I found the memories that I have of it have blurred, which is good, because I don't want to really remember what happened. But by doing the act of forgiveness, that memory has become so distant now. It's almost blurred. It's not, it's not like it was. So for me personally, that's quite helpful to be able to further let go of that memory.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't really need to remember what's happened, because we can't change what's happened. We can
No.
only change what we feel about it, and how we hold
How
that
we hold
memory.
it. Yes.
So forgiveness helps us to let go.
Yes.
And then when we let go, we can move on, because we haven't got that weight holding us down. Oh, Marcia, it's been so wonderful to talk to you.
And you too, Sarah.
Thank you. Do you have one tip that you could share on top of everything else that we talked about? Is there something that you could identify that would help somebody in their own healing journey now, or just reiterate something that you've said already?
I think the biggest thing is the forgiveness. The biggest thing is the forgiveness factor. And not being afraid to look within the self. I think it's scary sometimes to have to look within ourselves and say, where am I frightened? Where am I stressed?
Yeah.
What have I been holding on to for a long time? Feel the fear and do it anyway. That's what I would say.
I love that saying.
And
Yes.
feel the fear and do it anyway, because it may be your ticket to freedom.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want people to know is, when I went to the Option Institute, it was live. The Option Institute does not operate live anymore. They've stopped that, but they are operating on Zoom.
Okay.
So all their programs are available on Zoom, and they're very, very powerful. So if anybody is interested in that, yeah, I want them to know that too.
Thank you. And where can people find you, Marcia?
Okay, well, I have a website. The website is www.ashevillehealingenergy.com. Asheville is spelled ASHEVILLE. There's an E in there.
Okay.
AshevilleHealingEnergy.com. My email is marciainasheville@gmail.com. So it's MarciaInasheville@gmail.
Wonderful. I'll share that below, Marcia. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with me today on Heal Yourself podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and I hope I can reach a lot of people with my story via your beautiful podcast. Thank you.